Founders are one of the most energetic beings on earth because of the passion that they carry in their bellies. Out of their bellies are proceeding rivers of products. I have worked with a number of tech startups, and I can tell you one thing: what happens behind the scenes is usually the difference between startups that survive and the startups that quietly disappear. So when I say operational maturity, I'm talking about how organized and consistent a business is. So you need to know your ICP. One of the most important is financial discipline. You have got to be disciplined from the very early stage. I remember, working with a founder, and he told me, Buki, you know what? We don't really need documentation. Everybody knows what to do in the company. Well, at first it was working for him. When they had like 5 people, 6 months down the line, they started to double in size. Then you have software developers resigning, and they are living with all the codes in their heads. Welcome to Business Backstage. I am Bukola Osuntuyi, and in today's episode, I want us to talk about something that does not always get attention in startup business, and that is operations in early stage startups. Now, I have worked with a number of tech startups at different stages, some that are just raising their first seed, some in pre-seed stage, in fact, some even in ideation stage, and then some that are already going global. And I can tell you one thing: what happens behind the scenes is usually the difference between startups that survive and the startups that quietly disappear. There are some startups that will start off really well. Everybody knows about them. They have that visibility. They have a viable product. And then all of a sudden, it's all crickets. You don't get to hear from them anymore. You don't see their ads. But if you do a deep dive research, you would understand that something has happened. So today, I want us to get practical. We will look at what operational maturity looks like at the seed stage of a startup. We're also going to look at some of the biggest mistakes that founders make, and then how to decide which systems to set up when you're just starting out. And then when is it time to bring in somebody who will be dedicated to managing your operations? So let's dive in. First, what does operational maturity mean? So when I say operational maturity, I'm talking about how organized and consistent a business is, right? So it's in the way that it runs. It's when your team, your systems, and your processes are working together in sync so that things can get done without chasing, firefighting, and just constantly being in confusion. So in other words, you're just not, reacting to problems anymore. Rather, you are running with clarity. And that is ideal. So what does operational maturity look like for a seed stage startup? First of all, you might be wondering, if maybe you're not in the tech space, what does seed stage mean? Right? Now, a seed stage startup is usually at its earliest funding stage. It's still in the process of validating its business model and developing prototypes, or maybe their MVP, which is the minimum viable product. They're trying to find a product market fit. So operational maturity at this stage, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got corporate level processes, as some people might think, or that shining enterprise resource planning systems. It's a much simpler process. So for me, maturity in this stage looks like, one, having clarity on your goals. So that means knowing the problem that you are solving, which is very important, and also who you are solving for. In essence, that is understanding who your customers are. So you need to know your ICP, your ideal customer profile. At this stage, operational maturity is also about repeatable routines, maybe having weekly check-ins with your team or with your co-founder, or just having a very clear way that you handle customer issues. And it's also about setting up basic documentation. So nothing fancy, just like a living document on maybe your Notion or your Google Doc, something that has key roles, processes, and the decisions that you're making as you're going. And then last, but I would say one of the most important is financial discipline. That means knowing how much is coming into the business how much is going out, how many months of runway that you've got in. You have got to be disciplined from the very early stage, because if you don't have that strategy and that discipline, by the time you start to receive funding and the business starts to scale, it's going to be very difficult for you to reconcile your balance sheet at the end of each month. So I remember, working with a founder at some point, and he told me, he said, Buki, you know what? We don't really need documentation. Everybody knows what to do in the company. Well, at first it was working for him. That was when they had like 5 people, everybody in one room. But then 6 months down the line, what happened? They started to double in size, and then suddenly everybody was just confused, like, what's going on? And then you have new hires that are coming in. They didn't know where to find information. And then you have some key hires, like the software developers, resigning at some point because they've gotten an offer. And they are basically leaving with all of the documentation, all the processes, the procedures, all the codes. They're living with everything in their heads. And that is why I usually say maturity at this seed stage is not about having big systems. You don't need that, right? You just need to be intentional and making sure that you're avoiding running on chaos. Now, what are some of the biggest operational mistakes that founders make? So let's talk about the mistakes I see over and over again. Number 1, running on founder energy. Founders, I think, are one of the most energetic beings on earth, and that is because of the passion, the excitement that they carry in their bellies. Out of their bellies are proceeding rivers of products. So they're usually very excited, and they have that energy. They have the drive. They're able to motivate people. They're able to inspire people to, come, even when the company has not received any form of funding. When you hear a startup founder talk, you'll say, you know what, I'm all in. I'll come and work with you. So the founder is usually in every decision. But that's the problem. When they are very passionate and at that beginning stage, one of the mistakes is that they want to be involved in everything, which it's fair, to be honest, and it's understandable. It's their baby. It's still in the early stages. But you would see that they are in literally every decision. So every meeting, every customer call. And yes, it feels heroic, because the founder is there. They're just basically available and willing to assist the customers or partners. But what tends to happen is burnout eventually. And when there is that founder burnout, the team freezes when the founders are not around, because most of the operations are being controlled by the founder. So when you start to see that your employees have to meet you for every single thing, or almost every single thing, then you know that there would likely be a problem should anything happen to you if you're experiencing some type of burnout and for some reason you're not able to be at work. All right. I've been that operator trying to convince founders to let go of a few decisions. Certain things that can be handled by staff. Let go of this thing. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard. But the reality is that being the bottleneck, it just kills momentum. Employees want to feel trusted. They want to be empowered. They want you to trust that they can handle certain tasks. I don't have to come to meet you because I want to subscribe for a tool. As a marketing specialist, I'm trying to, subscribe for a CRM, and I have to come meet you for a card every time. Stuff like that. And if you hire me as a manager, there should be that level of trust. 2, over-engineering too early. What do I mean by this? So there was one startup that wanted to roll out an advanced human resource management tool. Meanwhile, they had just 8 employees. 8 employees. And you want to purchase an HRIS platform that you would probably be spending over £100 monthly. What they needed at that point was just like a shared folder and a checklist. So we spent weeks untangling tools that they did not need. So I had to go through all of the tools. Look, you don't need this. You don't need this. You don't need this. All these things. They're just taking your money that you're trying to manage. So a simple tool could have just prevented all of that. Number 3, reactive hiring. Now, founders would bring in somebody very quickly without thinking in depth, and they haven't really defined what that person will own, what their job description is all about. There was a time I was working and I just got a message from the founder. It says, I have hired this person. Please bring them up to speed, conduct their onboarding. They're going to be joining the team. I was like, okay, why am I just learning about this? Who is he? What is his role? What is the job description? Do we actually need him? Turned out 2 months after, the person left. So these are the issues. When you are experiencing that type of panic, it's important to just pause and really think through what is the purpose of this hire. And number 4, when founders ignore culture and communication, this is huge. So I've seen great teams fall apart because there was nobody to set the ground rules for how they communicate. Usually culture, it doesn't just happen. Some founders just tend to think that, culture will come based on, my attitude or how I treat people and all of that. No. It does not just happen. Just because you've started a company doesn't mean that the culture that you see amongst very great organizations just happened like that. It is intentionally designed, even in small ways, like how often you check in on an employee, the decisions that are shared, and even how you give people feedback. It is actually that intentional. Now, let us move on to how to prioritize which systems to build first. Now, this is one of the critical areas, and founders will usually ask me, Bukola, we have so much to set up. Where do we even start from? I am confused. Here is my framework for managing systems and deciding on which one to build first. Focus on survival systems first, and then your scale systems later. Now, what are your survival systems? Your survival systems are the basic tools that would keep your business alive. So that is having a clear hiring process, even if it's for one role. Just write down what success looks like for that role, right? It could be having like an onboarding checklist. So from the time when a customer has shown interest, or maybe they have made a transaction, what happens next? That checklist needs to happen, like from the time when a customer discovers your product or your service up until when they have purchased, and even after the purchase, how are you retaining them? Those things need to be documented. If it's for the employees with their onboarding, you need to just document a simple process. What are the things that I need to do? I hire them, I prepare their contract documents, I onboard them and I train them, set up their tools, I give them their laptops and emails and all of that. Those things need to be properly documented so that new joiners don't have to spend their first weeks guessing. And then next, you just need like a simple way to manage your customer issues. There will always be customer issues. So, I've seen teams using shared Google inbox. That works. But at this stage, especially with the advancement of AI, there are loads of tools and CRMs that you can actually get for free initially. Maybe when you have like a certain number of customers, maybe below 100 or 300, you can actually get CRM tools that can be used for free, and those tools would be better than sharing a Google inbox, because from there you're able to get like better reporting, you're able to get automated messaging and message triggers to the customers. You're also able to get reminders for maybe when to contact the customer. So it's better to look out for cost-effective tools that can help you to be more efficient. So those are still survival tools. And the fourth one is having a very clear way to track your cash flow. It's important to just set, for the meantime, basic spreadsheets that can help you with sharper decision making. Now, we've looked at the survival systems, and now let's move on to the scale systems. So scale systems, on the other hand, they are things like, having a CRM or an OKR or an advanced HR platform. Now, these things are fantastic, but I would say only when you've got the size and the complexity to justify them. And when I'm talking about CRMs, I'm actually talking about the paid ones. My rule of thumb is very simple. If it helps you to serve your customers better or to make decisions faster, then it's a survival system. Everything else can wait. Moving on. When do you know that it is time to bring in an operations lead? Now, here are the signs that I usually look out for. 1, if the founder is spending more time putting out fires than building. The business owners that I have worked with that would actually spend time in meetings with the customers, back and forth, talking about the product. It has not been integrated. When are you going to integrate it? I have not seen the APIs. When are we receiving the keys? These things need to be handled by somebody else so that you can focus on, the strategic arm of the business. So when you're spending time putting out, fires and building, you know that it's time to look for somebody who can manage your operations. Secondly, one of the signs that I watch out for is when your customers are getting inconsistent experiences across the different touch points that you have. So the experience that a customer can get maybe over the phone will be different from the email. The experience that they get in a particular region will be different from the experience that they get in another country by the time you start to expand. The third sign that I watch for is when the team is starting to grow, say beyond 10 to 15 people, and communication is now becoming messy. Some people are getting certain information and then some are, kept in the dark, or maybe there is, a miscommunication somewhere. Then you know that it's time. The fourth, I would say, is when investors start to ask for structured reporting and maybe there's nobody that has the time to pull it together. In order to be proactive, to have somebody who is readily producing those reports, it's important to have somebody on board. So an operations lead at this stage is more about creating a breathing room, just keeping the team aligned and building systems that allow you to scale without being burnt out. So let's wrap this up. Operational maturity at the seed stage is about having clarity and being able to have repeatable processes and workflows, and also being financially disciplined. And it's important to avoid the classic mistakes that founders make. Try not to be the bottleneck of your company. Don't over-engineer things when it's not necessary. Don't hire reactively, and also try not to ignore culture and the importance of communication within the team. Also focus on your survival systems first, and then save the skill systems for later. And then bring in an operations lead when you start to feel the cracks of the business growth. So here's my challenge to you. This week, I want you to take one process in your business, right? I want you to start writing down what your processes are. Maybe when you are onboarding a new employee or when you are handling a customer ticket. I want you to share it with your team or your employee, even if it's one person, share it with that person. That one small step that you take can be the start of your operational maturity. It makes things a lot easier when your business begins to expand. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on building and scaling businesses. And if you found this useful, I want you to share it with a founder, share it with a friend, because sometimes I think the best gifts that you can give anybody is less chaos. Until next time, keep building. I'll see you on the next episode.